Talk about a moment in life that impacted you. When you think of this phrase, what do you default to? Do you think of something like a bad experience, a roadblock even, or maybe some grand obstacle in life that just stuck with you for some odd reason? Well, as a junior in high school, with the ever-looming college essay dangling in front of me everywhere I go, I tend to find myself centered around the essay. See, I speak with my friends and I usually ask them what they wrote about. They tell me things like, I spoke about my parents leaving me at a young age, or I suffered with this growing up, or I had to suffer with trauma growing up. Some of the people I conversed with even admitted that they couldn't find anything to talk about besides the things that were negative. More and more, I came to this realization that people my age tended to see their bad experiences as traumatic or damaging, rather than viewing those moments as building blocks to help define their character and move forward in life. This led me to ask a simple question. Why? Why is this something that is so normalized? And why is this something that's done so abundantly among students in school? So I decided to research this question bit by bit. First, I wanted to find out what was the intention of the college essay. According to College Board, when admissions officers are looking over the essay, they're looking for three things primarily: a unique perspective, strong writing ability, and an authentic voice. Additionally, in a Teen Vogue article written by Hodgkin Claire, she notes that there are two perspectives that students take when approaching this essay. Firstly, students can see this as an opportunity to set themselves apart from being a set of data points to a real human being. However, she acknowledges that students can also use this essay to search through their personal experiences for a trauma they think that they can sell. And when students compare each other to their classmates, especially when trying to apply to the colleges or universities that only accept a limited number of applicants, they're practicing ranking themselves in a form of trauma Olympics. Now, I love the use of the phrase trauma Olympics because it sheds light on the notion that kids tend to compete against each other to see who has a more severe trauma. And this is what leads kids into emphasizing the bad in their essay rather than the takeaway that they learned. Now look, I love a good underdog story, but I just want to remind you that failure shouldn't define your success. Your success should be defined by your positive moments in life. And it should be defined by the lessons learned from the negative things you've gone through in order to pave the way for your success. Now, I myself have gone through some bad moments in life that I'm sure could be mentioned when helping me get into college. I could speak about things like battling through sleep deprivation day in and day out as I went to school. Or I could speak about the passing of my grandmother due to cancer at a young age. But as I try to find material to write about in my essay, I think to myself, why should I bring this problem or struggle up now when I just dealt with it when it affected me in the first place? You know, people wouldn't just bring up traumatic experiences to complete strangers. That would come off as weird, right? This is why students are expected to use their liberties in order to express who they are when making this essay. For a moment here, I want you to imagine being in the shoes of a college admissions officer, reading a number of essays by students all over the country, constantly seeing a number of sob stories. It looks a little something like this, I'd imagine. You see a handful of the same problems like abuse, neglect, trauma, and much, much more. And this is due to a handful of reasons. First, students admit that they struggle when trying to find things to write about in the essay. On Reddit, in r/applying to colleges, many students explain online that if there's nothing significantly traumatic that happened in their lives, they are challenged trying to find material to write about. Second, I just want to inform you what colleges do ask for when making your essay. They're looking for things like a person's uniqueness or their creativity, things that show off the individual on their own, rather than things like a highly personal story or tragic moments that don't really reflect growth in a person. This is a Common App essay prompt given to a number of students every year when trying to apply for colleges. And it goes as so. Recount a time where you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from this experience? Now, what I'm about to do is show you a graph. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the topics that students chose to write about when answering this prompt. And on the top, you're going to see the average family income of those students. This is data collected in 2016 by 60,000 University of California applicants. And it reveals a scary trend that kids that come from households with lower economic status tend to speak on more negative things when formulating their essay, which is exactly what colleges advise not to do when forming your essay. Now look, I just want to say this as a preface that this graph doesn't show who got accepted or rejected when creating their essay. But what it does show is that when making their essay, most kids who came from households with lower economic status didn't have more positive things to talk about. And it reveals a glaring contrast of the things that people brought up to mention. You see things like abuse and death on the upper half of the graph, while on the lower half you see things like sports and traveled being compared as setbacks. This is what influences a kid's negativity bias when creating their essay. And this is a problem that needs to be addressed and changed. We need to stop commodifying adversity in an effort to stand out. And students need to understand that suffering doesn't have to be a prerequisite of success. I propose that we start in our community and reshape the way how we interact with each other by establishing new patterns that promote growth and progress so that we can better articulate our strengths to better define what makes you, you. Next, we can encourage feedback that starts off with kindness so that people can feel more welcome when trying to learn new things. And it could look something as simple as this: a feedback burger. Now, I know you might laugh, some food, but it shows that when a person feels more welcome being introduced by positive feedback, when they're trying to fix their flaws or fix whatever things may be an issue to them, it will allow them to be more susceptible and retain the feedback better than they would otherwise. And this is what can drive people to the motivation to strive for more. And that drive for more is exactly what colleges want when viewing applicants in their essays. And this can be applied throughout life. Now look, this isn't something that's just bound to the classroom. This can be applied to all forms of relationships in life, whether it be student to student, teacher and student, friend and friend, parent and child, boss and coworker. It could be applied everywhere. With all of this though, I just want to speak to you listening to me right now, to understand that with whatever experience you've gone through in life, whether good or bad, you should never have to use your experience to define who you are as a person. Remember, our experiences don't define us. It is what we make of it that determines who we are. Thank you.